All right, I'm going to start up. As it says up on the screen right now, I did stick a repo out there with about 8 different things in it. We're going to talk about each and every one of those, at least 7 of them today, and maybe all 8 of them today. All right, so that's the first thing. And as it says in here, today I want to go over the MySQL material that I tried to cover last week. If you didn't hear what happened, right on my screen for Microsoft Teams, my leave button is right next to the share button. And evidently, because that's all I can think of, is I accidentally clicked the leave button, which kicked all of you out. When I did that, I went and restarted, which didn't restart you. And I went and talked then for almost 2 hours, but unbeknownst to me, because I never checked it, what it was actually recording was just the blank screen and no sound of what had been showing to you guys originally. So it was just a waste of a period, and I apologize for that. So I am going to go over the material I tried to cover last week. First, we're going to go over the queries based off of the Classic Models 2 database. I have moved that assignment so it is no longer due last Sunday or yesterday or 2 days ago, I guess. It's now due this coming Sunday, 9/11, along with the second MySQL assignment that I have passed out, but I will talk about again in just a bit. When we get done with that, we're going to go over some NodeJS exercises. Hello, John. And as it says in there, the goal is to merge the MySQL stuff with the Node.js stuff by the end of the week. All right, before we do that, and this will probably be what we do tomorrow, and that is I have literally gone back and rebuilt the BMI program, but I've rebuilt it as a Node.js app just to show you a couple things about it and some of the stuff that we are going to be going through. All right, so with that said, I'm going to jump onto the internet here, and in particular, I'm going to go out to localhost. I'm going to bring up the Classic Models 2. This is the database that we were using last week, and I'm going to go through the exercises that are in there. That's why, again, if you did not have a copy of the homework, it was put in there in a GitHub repo that I sent out today. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different tables. And the first thing that you were asked to do in there was to, for each of the tables, show a count of the records in each table. And you were also supposed to be using aliases for field names and for table names. And the table names really just when you were doing joins. So to start this, I'm going to go into the SQL window here. Hopefully you can see that. I don't want to make it too big, but so I just did a select count star as total number customers from customers. Now, really, I'm not going to go through any more of these first ones than that because they were all pretty much the same thing. So, you could say select count star as total number of employees from employees, as total number of products from products, etc. All right. And once you run that, then you get 122. So what I got when I ran mine, and hopefully you got the same, was I got that there were 122 customers, there were 23 employees, 110 products, 7 product lines, 326 orders, 2,996 order details, 273 payments, and 7 offices. So that was number 1. All right. Then for number 2, what we were asked to do, and you were asked to do this as 3 queries, but I'm just going to do it as 1, You were asked for the biggest quantity ordered, the smallest quantity ordered, and the average quantity ordered. And hopefully you remember that all of these involve the use of aggregate functions. All right, so select max quantity ordered as biggest, biggest, come on, Jeff, biggest QTY ordered. Let's see. Then a min quantity ordered as smallest QTY ordered. And then finally the AVG QUANTITY ordered again as average QTY ordered. Now, I mentioned this, the other day. I want to say it again, and that is the fact that when you look at this, all right, when you look at this, what you're going to get back for the average quantity ordered, all right, what you're going to end up getting back from there is you're going to get back, it's like 35.1205 or something like that. And typically when you work with something like that, you want to round it up. Unfortunately, if you do a 32.1205, it's going to just round it to 32. So what I did on here was I added literally the word ceiling. And that's like the ceil function, CEIL function that we have used before with JavaScript. So I should have the biggest quantity ordered, the smallest quantity ordered, and the average quantity ordered after running this query. Okay. Oh, and I did this the other day too. It's so stupid of me. You got to say what table it's coming from. So from order details. Okay. So and hopefully I won't forget to do that again. But the idea is you used 3 of the aggregate functions here: max, min, and average. Now, max and min, we've talked about this before. Max and min can be used both on numeric fields and on non-numeric fields. Average can only be used on numeric fields. All right, so hopefully I did that one right. And let's run this query. And you can see I get the biggest quantity ordered was 97, the smallest was 6, and the average is 36. Again, as I mentioned to you previously, if I go back in here and I leave that ceiling out, and I do it like this with just the average in there, all right, and you run it, it comes back with 35 point, I guess it was 2190. And it's not really that that's wrong, but when you're working with something like that, you never know who's going to be looking at, if you are creating something for reports or whatever, so you're always better off rounding up in that kind of a situation. All right. So the next question said, show the number of employees at each office, use one table. Order the results by the number descending, then the office ascending. And again, there is probably more than one way of writing most of these queries. I would put money on it that almost always there's more than one way of writing these queries. I tried to do it in the way I consider to be the most straightforward. You may agree, you may not agree with that when you look at some of the queries that I've written. So select the office code as office code. And a count of the employee numbers. And I said as employee count from employees group by office code, order by count of employee number in descending order, and then by the office code in ascending order. So you could put ASC there, or you can just leave it blank. Now, the other thing I want to say about this particular query, all right, is when you look at it, we could, of course, have come in here and, we could have aliased this table, but there's no reason to alias this table. You also don't have to capitalize anything in here. MySQL is a case insensitive language. I like to capitalize and fully capitalize any word that is a keyword. Not everybody agrees with that. So again, on something like that, of course, it would be your call. So let's see if we get this, and let's see if it's ordered by the count of employee number. Now, in the past, when you read some of the MySQL documentation, what they said was, once you alias a field like this, I should be able to use that alias in here. I've tried it already and had it work, and I've tried it already and had it not work. And I mean, it's just one of the irregularities of this language, but this appears to work when I use count of employee number both times. I don't think I spelled anything wrong, and I did say the table that it was coming from. So when you look, there are a total of 23 employees. So when I add up those employee counts, it should equal 23. 6 and 5 is 11, and 4 is 15, and 2, 4, 6, 8 is 23. So at least it appears to work. All right. And you'll notice that the ones where we've got the ties, then we said to do it in ascending order based on the office code. I'm just going to keep going. And I figure that if any of you have a question, you're going to ask. And if you don't have any questions, you're not going to
Can
ask.
you scroll up real quick so I can...
Sure.
Thank you.
Are you looking for the query?
Yeah, I just was looking at what you had the office code at the very end.
And again, you could put here, it's redundant, but you could put that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. All right. And what some developers do is they do what's called fully qualify everything they're doing. In other words, they would come in here and say, select employees.office code, count employees.office number, group by employees, etc. And whether they have one table or whether they have multiple tables, they do that and fully qualify. To me, that's a little bit of overkill. But again, everybody does things in their own way. All right. So the next question that was on there, number 4, I guess I wish I wouldn't have asked you this many questions, but I did. So we'll do a couple of them. The first one was, how many employees have a first name starting with a vowel? All right. So what I put in here was select count star as, and I just called it EMP's first name vowel start. Again, you could have called this anything, long as it was something that made sense. All right. From employees, where, yeah, a couple of these keys keep sticking on here. I don't know why. Where first name, like a percentage, or now when you do that, of course, it automatically looks for a match with that or. So let me grab all these. A, E, I, O, and U. Okay, so this would be E, this is I, this is O, and this is U. No or there. And it doesn't matter whether those ors are in upper or lowercase, but just for consistency's sake, I'll put them all in uppercase. So this would say the first name must be A followed by something like Anthony, E followed by something like Edward rather, I followed by something like, I don't know, Igor, O followed by something like Oscar, and U followed by something like whatever, Ulysses, I don't know. Okay. So there they are. And when I grab that query, then let me run it. All right. Now it says 2, and I'm going to go back and verify it in a minute. But one thing is, depending, if I had a million names in here, of course I should get back more than 2. But when I run this and I have, where is it? If I run this and I have in here only 1, 2, like 23 employees, all right, I might be better off doing something like this then. Either I could have come in here and said, select first name, count of first name, and there's only going to be 1, but that's okay. And then I could have said from employees, and rather than this where, I could have left this out of there and then just said group by first name. All right. And whether I did an order by, there's only 2 records in here anyway. All right. Now, you look at that, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. Yeah, there is. The query was miswritten, but the point is, you see these 2. You've got an Andy and you've got an Anthony. The reason technically that query wasn't written wrong, but what I did not put in the query, all right, what I did not put in here was any filtering. So I could have done my where it's this, where it's the, or that, or that, or that. What I'm trying to get to though is this. If I had just done this, select first name from employees, all right, and then I would have said here, order by first name, something like that, and then ran it, I'm still only got 23. I would very quickly be able to go through here and say, oh, there's 2. And I could look through here like this and say, yep, that's all there is. And what I'm getting to is, bottom line is, sometimes you think that you've written the correct query. And normally when you think you have, you have. But there are going to at least be occasions where you think you've written the correct query and you have not. All right. You may get back output. You may not get back any output. All right. And then I'm going to switch over to, I'll go through one of the last ones because it's a longer one. So I'm going to do the last one that's in here. How many employees have a first name starting with a vowel or a last name starting with a vowel? It's a little longer query, but I'll do that one anyway. All right. First name. So with a first name with a vowel or a last name with a vowel. Kind of a long title, but you get the idea. Now, again, there are different ways of writing this, but to me, technically, there were two different conditions in here. They were both compound conditions, so I wrote them like this. Now I'm going to hit enter here a few times there. Now that should go away. No, it's not. I thought it did. Fine. I'm just going to copy this down a bunch of times again. So that's A, that's E, that's I, that's O, that's U. All right, so that's half of my equation. All right, but I also want the thing for the last name. Well, it's almost the same query. So I'm going to grab this, come down here and paste it in. And where I've got first name, I'm just going to change them all to last name. Okay. So that is a first name that starts with a vowel or a last name that starts with a vowel. Remember that the percent sign is the 0 or more wildcard. An underscore is a single character wildcard. All right, I don't think there's any mistakes in here. Just in case, I'm going to copy this. And when I ran it, it came back rather with, still came back with 2. You know, now, all that's saying is, all right, as far as the first name, I don't have any last names that start with a vowel. Again, I can always come back there and I can check this by just saying, just select last name from employees. Probably would make sense then to do an order by last name. All right. So when I go in here, all right, I can see B, C, F, G, etc. You'll notice when you look though, there are none that actually start with it. And if I was doing an ends with, the only change that I would have to make on here then is instead of looking like this and being an A followed by a percent sign, it would be a percent sign followed by an A. Okay, and hopefully that just makes sense. All right. Number 5, show a count of the number of customers for each employee. All right. And they call this thing sales rep employee number. Why that big a name, I have no idea. And I just said, I renamed it as sales rep. And then I did a count star as number of customers from customers. Now, if we do this and we come in here and we do the group by sales, this right here. All right, so if I run that query, what you'll notice is there are 22 customers here, according to this, that don't have a sales rep. All right. And you may or may not remember from when we started, we have a total of 122 customers. So when I add all these together, all right, and you'll notice here it says we've got 16 rows, but when I add these together right here, they should equal 122. Well, the key takeaway from right here is that out of those 122, a little over 20% of those don't have a sales rep. Now, that could be very important information to somebody. I'm not saying it would be, I'm saying it could be. So when I come back here, what I said was, and you weren't asked to do this, but this is what I said. I came in here and I said, where, and I added that sales employee number is not no. All right, just to show you that you could use that. You weren't expected to put that into the answer. If you put in the answer, the first one I showed you, and you didn't have this, totally fine. All right. But this is another one of those things that could potentially be used by a member of management. You know, somebody might turn around and say, hey, why do these customers, you know, not have a sales rep? Just like earlier, when we looked at the biggest quantity ordered and the smallest quantity ordered, what you're oftentimes looking for in there are trends. So maybe with quantity ordered, the biggest quantity ordered isn't that important a thing. Maybe the cost of the order is more important. All right, because again, you know, do you want to sit and concentrate on your customers who are bringing in the most cash? All right. All right. So if I put that in there and run it, what you'll notice is I don't get the one that was in there before that had the 22. All right. That's the only difference. All right. Speaking of what I just told you here before, and that is, let me get rid of this. And number 7 said, give me a count. I'm sorry, the number 6 said, give me a count of the number of orders for each customer. So select customer number as customer number. Count of order number as, and I just call this number orders. From orders, group by, whoops, group by customer number. Now, I do want to mention again something else here. You may or you may not know. All right, I'm gonna put something down here. I'm gonna get rid of it in just a minute. That's the whole query. But let's pretend that we just hired 3 new employees. All right, it doesn't matter their name, it doesn't matter anything except for the fact that employee number 1 is going to start at $50,000 a year. Employee number 2 is going to start at $75,000 a year. And employee number 3, we have not yet figured out their salary. So technically, it is null or unknown. The reason that I'm showing you this is there's a difference between saying this and saying this. All right. So if I do, for example, in fact, even more than count, let's say that I wanted the average salary. All right. And let's say it's called salary. In this first case, it's going to add these 2 up, but it's going to divide by 3. So when you say star, it includes nulls as well as non-nulls. But if you put a field name in there like this, it says only grab the ones that do not have a value of null. So in this case, the average is going to be like about 42,000 or 41,000 something. In this case, it's going to be like 67 or whatever it is, 60,000 something. So you could have a big difference if it doesn't matter, or if you're sure that there's never any nulls in there, count star works just fine. All right. But if there's a chance that there's going to be nulls, you don't want to use average star or whatever. All right. All right. So again, select customer number, count from orders, order by customer number. So again, you can see in here, we're ordering it by customer number. All right. And there's 122 customers. Probably what would have been better would have been to order it by this, by the count of the order number. You were not asked to do that. I wouldn't have expected you to, but well, doesn't like something. So let me go back and fix it. I don't know what the error was. So let me look at the error. Invalid use of group function. Usually when you get this, all right. Well, normally it's because you haven't included that in there, but I don't know why it would have a problem with a count. But evidently it does. So I guess it did want the customer number. You could put other things in there too, just so you know. All right. The other thing is occasionally when you run a group by query, just so you know this, occasionally when you run a group by query, and let's say that right here, there was a field, I don't even know if there is one, but let's say there was a field called customer name. Let's just pretend for a second that there was that. All right. And you go in and you run the query. All right. Sometimes you'll get back an error message because it expects the field that's in there to be in one of the select things that you're looking for when you're doing a group by. This is another example where I've done it before and done something like this and it's worked, and then tried it again later and it hasn't worked. Not really sure why that's even the case. I could understand why it would work. I could understand why it would not work, but I have a hard time understanding why sometimes something works and sometimes rather it doesn't. All right. So let me go on to number 7. Okay, because that's the number of payments. So I'm just going to remove this. And I want to make sure with this one that you wrote it correctly. And what I mean is this should have said some amount as total payments for this customer, something like that. From payments grouped by the customer number. Something along those lines. All right. So, all right, I'm going to grab that one. I'm going to run the query. And you can see the total payments. All right. Now, why is that important? The reason that that's important is had you come in there and instead of saying sum, said count, you'd get very different numbers because that's how many payments they made. That isn't the total amount of their payments. So again, it's imperative that you always put in, the right function as far as what you're looking for. All right. Number 8, show the products in each product line. Right? Now, again, hopefully just taking a look at that, it makes sense. So give me each product line and the count of the number of products, product names there are in that product line, and then order it by the product line itself. Like I said, I'm hoping, because there's not being a lot of questions being asked, that I'm just hoping that what I'm putting in here makes sense. All right. So when we run this, we had 7 product lines, so we should get back. That's interesting. I got 1 back. So let's see. Select product line. I think I put the whole query in there. Group by product line. That is not an order by, that is a group by. All right. So I put order by in there. I was wondering why that looked really funky. All right. So it should have been a group by, so let's look at that. And there we get back 7. All right, and that was the number of product lines that we had. All right, so again, that one should have looked like this. All right. Number 9, show the number of order details for each order. After a while, I realized these begin to become somewhat repetitive, but I just wanted it to where, the stuff that we did in here makes sense. All right. I have not talked to Evan. I'm actually probably going to talk to him tonight, but I have no idea in his C# class if he goes over MySQL or not. All right. But I know that in mine, I have gone over it in the past. So to me, a lot of this is just review from stuff you've already had. So show the number of order details for each order. And that's at least what I got for it. Okay. All right. So again, you are going to get in here 326. Why 326? Because when I gave you those numbers at the beginning for how many were in each table, there were 326 total orders. So again, we could do some manipulation with this as well. All right. All right, number 10, what is the largest payment amount, the smallest payment amount, and the minimum payment amount? And this is a dollars and cents. So what you're going to notice is when you run this one, all right, when you run this one the way it is, because I'm going to come back to it in a second. Come on. Oh, should be. Oh, I didn't say from again, didn't I? Yes, I did not. from payments. Okay. So again, there's your largest payment, there's your smallest payment, and that looks really bad in my humble opinion for average payment amount. So here is one time where I would round. And I'd round the average payment amount, and I would round it off to 2 decimal places like that. To me, that's the right way to write that particular query. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at that. And you'll notice when we do, again, to me, it just looks a little nicer. All right. Okay, let's continue on to at least a couple more before we take our first break. So number 11 was show a listing of each product, including the product name, the product line, and the text description. Now, I don't want to keep going back and forth, but if you did go and grab that repo or you've got the original assignment, you've got a schema diagram on there. And you'll notice if you look through the schema diagram that the product name, one place it's available is in the products table. Same with the product line, but the text description is in the product line table. All right. So there's different ways that you can combine in here, but I'll show you the way I did it. And I'm going to write this twice. All right, so this is one way of writing this, and this is using more of the newer type of syntax, but right below that, I'm going to show you the other way. This is the only time I'm going to write it the other way, but again, just so you see it. All right, so I could have said they're from products P, and then this would have become a where. Just because I want you to be able to compare and contrast the two different ways of doing things. Again, back when I was your age and I was learning this stuff, we did it the second way. Now what's considered to be more in vogue is the first way. If you get the same answer, and I'm going to run it twice, but if you get the same answer both times, it really doesn't matter. All right? Because let's face it, if you're doing this for a living, the chances of your supervisor coming in and saying, hey, why did you write this using the old syntax as opposed to the new syntax isn't very good. All right. So let's run it twice. I'm going to get rid of this one and then bring it back in just a moment. So there's the first one. And again, remember, I aliased the tables now. So products P, PL, product lines PL. All right. And it is legal to alias the table and actually use the aliases before you've done the aliasing. All right. Technically, we didn't, if we've got fields, let's just pretend for a second that this field and this, let's say that this field here, the product name was only in the products table and the text description was only in that table. If that's the case, you don't even need to put anything in front of these. But since the product line field appears in both tables, you must put something in there, either the name of the table, if you're not going to alias, or an alias like we've done here. Again, here's a time where I pretty much, again, did the fully qualified query here, even though it probably wasn't necessary. All right. So if I go and run this, you can see I get back what? 110. All right. And again, why 110? Because there are 110 products. So here's the product name, there's the product line, and there's the description. All right, so starting with 1952, Alpine, Renault, etc. And if I bring the other one up and run that one like this, it should give me the exact same numbers, 110 and the exact same thing. So I would suggest you using the one that you think makes the most sense. Now, I don't want to waste your time, but I want to very quickly tell you something because I found this interesting. All right. When I was a freshman in college, when I went for my 4-year degree, I was taking college algebra. All right. I took algebra in high school, and that's probably the only D I got in high school. The teacher hated me and I hated the class, but I thought I really should learn this stuff. All right. So we're halfway into the course. I've got a D going again, which is not good. But then we went over polynomials, and for some reason, they made sense to me. And the guy said, and this is how you solve polynomials. So I went home that night, and all of a sudden, for some goofy reason, I noticed a weird pattern in these. And I said, where the teacher had gone and done these, and he had like 6 steps that he went through to get it, I could knock it down to 3. So the next day in class, I thought, well, I'm going to bring it up, not to be a smart aleck, but I wanted to know if the way that I was doing it worked. And so he got done. He goes, are there any more, we got done. The teacher says, are there any more questions on this? And I raised my hand. I said, not a question, but a comment. And I showed him what I did. And he said, that won't work. I said, okay, please tell me then why it doesn't work and give me some examples. So he had me come up to the board, and he put 3 problems down that got progressively harder with each problem. And I was able to do each problem correctly in half the number of steps that he did. Now, maybe I embarrassed him. That at all wasn't my idea. But at the end of the period, when we were all filing out, he goes, Mr. Scott, can you stay here for a minute? And I thought, well, that's great. I did tick him off. So I said, yeah. So he said, I'm doing part of my master's thesis on polynomials. And I don't know how you figured this out, but you did. And I'd like to use this in my master's thesis. I said, yeah, you got my permission. And he said, yeah, and as a reward, I'm bumping your grade up to a B, which was pretty cool because instead of getting a D in that class, I ended up with a B. So all I'm getting to is, again, almost always when you do any of these queries, there are multiple ways of doing the queries. And sometimes you're going to do a way that's going to seem easier to you than another way. Try doing it then a couple ways. If you're getting the same answer, go with the way that makes the most sense. All right, end of the sermon. It's 12:55. Let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 1:05 and finish these last ones up. All right, it is 1:05. I changed to the diagram, the schematic diagram of the databases here. And I don't think there's anything surprising in here, but I just wanted to mention a couple things. The first one that we were supposed to do was to get a listing of some of the stuff was in the products table and some of the stuff was in the product lines table. All I want to get to here is that by having the schematic, it's oftentimes much easier for you to see what to join with what. All right. And I may have mentioned this the other day. I may not have. I know I mentioned it, but it might have been in the lecture that got cut off. And that is there is no table in this database that's an island. In other words, in the schematic that we saw in Muroc in our C# book last year, we had a table. I think it was, I don't remember, it was like state code. It was some table that was in there that was not linked to any other table. You don't want that in a database. All right. And normally, if you have something like that in a database where you've got one table that's an island into and of itself, you'll create a join table so that you're able to combine that table with something else. All I'm trying to get to here is when you look at this, let's pretend for a second, all right, that I wanted something from the products table and something from the customers table. That's what I wanted. Well, I could join products with order details. Then I could join order details with orders. Then I could join orders with customers. I mean, you get the idea. In many ways, it's like putting a puzzle together. All right. But it is important that you start to realize these relationships. Okay. And again, when you look at these, where you see the little, and this is just the coloring of this, the way they do it. When you look at these, and you'll notice how some of them have the little triangle here, that's the many side. All right. So every product line can have 0, 1 or more products. Every order can have 0, 1 or more order details. All of these have been set up as one-to-many relationships. All right. And the only other thing I want to mention in here is if you do take a look, because it looks a little bit funky. All right. And I'm not sure with this line that's coming through here, and I'm looking at it, and you'll notice that it's got employee number and it's got reports to. All right. What you could do, and I didn't show it, I should have went back and actually ran it and created it and then ran it. But what that one is doing right there, this line that you see right here, that is not the same as this one right here. This line that you see right in here allows you to do what's called a self join. So that would be joining the employees table on itself. And you might say, fine, why would you want to do that? In this case, you could find out if you had any employee in here that didn't have someone to whom he or she reports to. That's how you would use that in here. Typically, when you have a self join, it is for something like that. You're literally trying to find anomalies. You're trying to find something that exists that ideally, at least, shouldn't exist. All right, enough sermonizing. Let's go on, because number 12 asks for the order number, the quantity ordered, the price each, and the quantity in stock. And if you look over on the orders detail table, what you'll notice is it has order number, it has quantity ordered, it has price each, but it doesn't have quantity in stock. That quantity in stock is in the products table. So we're going to have to join these two, which will necessitate joining on the product code, as you can see. All right, so let me change my, hopefully not screw it up and knock you off. But let me stop my sharing and go back to where we were sharing before. All right. So this one will be select od.order number as order number. od.quantity ordered as QTY ordered. od.price each as price each. And finally, p.quantity in stock as QTY in stock. And I know you all know this already, but there really is no reason I have to line these up the way that I've done. Oops, that's great. There. All right. And again, I did not have to do that, is what I'm telling you. All right. But it makes for an easier read, in my opinion. So I want to do it from order details, and that's OD. And I want to do an inner join, and I want to do it on OD, oops, I'm sorry, inner join products, P, all right, on OD.product code equals P.product code. And the reason I think I'm getting that is that should be products. Trying to see, oh, no, there we go. All right. So what does it like? Ending quote was expected. Yep, how about right there? So we are joining two tables here. And again, we could have done it with the older, more traditional syntax. This is considered the better way of doing it. Why? Because supposedly, internally, this gives you a faster answer. So especially in those cases where you are dealing with something where the timing of it matters, this could become really important. All right. If you say, well, we're not doing that, maybe we're doing payroll or we're doing once a month reports or whatever, then you could write it either way and it would work. All right. So let's run this. And there you go. And again, why might this be important? Well, you might be wanting to check on who's ordering the most. All right. How many are in stock, etc. Now I'm looking at this. Somehow that looks funky to me. All right. So this is, yeah, that much. Yeah, that. But if it's a price each, the quantity in stock, I have a hard time believing the quantity in stock for everything for every order number is 7933. Could it be? Yeah. But something seems weird on that to me, just taking a look at it. I guess I hadn't noticed that before. All right. The next one asks you to show a listing of each customer number, order number, and I can get both those from the orders table, then check number, payment date, and amount. And I can get each one of those from the payments table, and they both have a field in common, that being customer number. So O dot customer number as customer number, O dot order number as order number, pay dot check number as check number, pay dot payment date as payment date, and then finally pay dot amount as payment amount. And I want that from orders O, from orders O, and that's okay, we'll fix that in a second. Inner join payments, pay on O dot customer number equals pay dot customer number. Now, no one is asked, but if you were wondering why I call this pay instead of P, I could have called it P and it would work just fine. But there's a chance later I might have to do some joining that involves both the products table and the payment table. So I have been referring to the products table as P. So rather than to avoid any kind of confusion, I just call the payments table pay. Just like I called the orders table O and the order detail table order OD. All right. So that's everything. Make sure I didn't make any mistakes. All right. And there you've got it. All right. Now, again, this is another one of those types of things where this could become very important. In a way, it's not exactly the same, but my guess is probably all of you have a debit card. All right. But I'm married to a woman who's old fashioned and we still write checks. All right. So she's got to balance the checkbook every month. That's kind of what you'd be able to do here. But you're able to look at the amount, the check number, all right, who the customer was who wrote the check, and what order that was associated with, and the date it was paid. So again, as always, there can be a heck of a lot of information in these things. All right. Next. Number 14 is show a listing of each order number, shipped date, quantity ordered, and price each. This has got all the information in the orders table and the order detail table, and both those tables have the order number in there. So that's what we will be doing the join on. So select order number as order number, shipped date as ship date, quantity ordered as QTY ordered, and finally price each as price each from orders O, and I'll fix that in a minute, inner join order details OD. Let's fix that quickly here. On order number equals order number. That should be correct, barring me having typed in something incorrectly, but I don't think I have. Just in case, I'll copy to the clipboard. Unknown column of each. Oh, okay, that should have been OD. And I wrote OF. There we go. All right, so there you got it. All right, 3 more. We're finished with this. So number 15 said, show a listing of each product line, product name, product vendor, and text description. All right, and again, everything in here I can pull out of the products table except the text description, but I can join the products table with the product lines table on the product line field. Now, one thing about this, let me write the query first. I want to show you something that I think is a bad thing. Now, although it's done quite often, all right, and I spelled that wrong. So although it is done quite often, I would not take one of the fields that's in my database and name the table the same thing as one of those fields. It's not that you can't do it. All right, but I'm always at least try to be one that tries to avoid confusion whenever possible. So I would have probably called this something different than product lines, or I would have taken that product line field and renamed it to something else. Okay. All right. So let's go and run that one. And there you go. All right. Now, I am a little embarrassed right now to say that for number 16, I'm looking in here and I ran it and it didn't work. So I want to show you what I did because it's close, but let me say this again. It works, but it returns nothing. So it was show a listing of each customer name, order number, quantity ordered, payment date, check number, and amount. So I want to show you what I wrote, but I've got to go back and look at it because there's got to be something wrong with it because it returned nothing. So I'll put in what I have and you can see it. Now, when you work with multiple ones like this, so I've got here from, oops, customers C, of course, that's going to not do what I want it to do. All right. Inner join, payments, pay. Of course, I got to fix that too right away. On C dot customer number equals pay dot customer number. That's the first part. Then I have to do another inner join of orders O on, fix this. C dot customer number equals O dot customer number. And then do one more inner join on order details. OD on O dot order number equals OD dot order number. Like that. So let's see. Unrecognized keyword. It should be inner join. That probably helped. There you go. Now, it could be the order in which I have these. All right. But when and I'm going to keep that up there for a second, but when I run it, I'll go right back to it. I believe that when I ran it, I got no output. What doesn't it like? It says at the inner join on line 10. So let's fix that. That would probably help, wouldn't it? Oh, now I got, okay. I'm not going to complain. I thought when I ran this before, maybe I mistyped something earlier. All right. But now this is the first time I am actually joining together more than two tables. All right. In fact, we are joining together 1, 2, 3, 4 tables here. Since we have 4 tables that we're joining together, you need to have 1, 2, 3 inner join statements. So you will always have one less inner join than the number of tables you are joining together. All right. So again, I'll leave that up there for just a second. If you do want to copy it down, fine. And if you don't, that's your call as well. And then I'll put up the last one. Now, after we put up the next one, those last 5 that are in there, 18, 19, 20, 21, and 22, I am asking you to create your own 5 meaningful queries, joining together a minimum of 3 tables. If you want to go to all the trouble to try to join all 8 of the tables together, you can, in which case you'll have 7 inner join statements. And believe me, in the past, I have always given like one problem like that, and by and large, it's kind of driven people nuts, which is not my intention. All right. So if you want that one, take a screenshot or whatever, and we'll go on and we'll do the last one. The last one asks for a listing of each order number, order date, quantity ordered, and product line. So that this last one will have a total of 3 tables that we're joining. Okay, so let me grab that. So that is the last one right there. Now, all I can think of from what I told you before is I think when I run this, I thought I got data back. I thought it was 16 that I didn't get data back. Maybe it was 17. All right, it doesn't, oh, because I spelled order number wrong. So let's fix that. Nope, I got data back from this one too. Okay. So again, that was the last query. All right. So you are, as I mentioned, you are then to do the last 5 by yourselves. Now, the question got asked to me by Michael, who's not online with us right now, but how do we turn this in? It's kind of up to you. Personally, I wish that you would, take all of your homework for each week, put it into a folder, and, take that folder and push it up to your GitHub repo. All right. Everybody finished the first assignment. All right. There not a lot of people took a lot of time making their gym website, but you all did it, which is what I was looking for. So everybody who did it got 50 out of 50. All right. But now for next week, for next Sunday, the 11th, there's going to be two things that you have to turn in. And I want to show you those right now before we go on. All right, so let me jump back. Yeah, let's see, do I have them opened? No, so let me open them first. Okay. Oops. The first one is what we just looked at. All right, I'm not going to go over it all anymore. But again, you should know, as it says, if you attempted at least on most of them, you really should on all of them, but to use aliases, boom, you get a point. The ones we just went over, 34 points. So if you just have followed along today and got all that stuff done, you're already at 35 out of 50 or at 70%. That's not passing, but it's 70 already. So again, with the last one, as it says, you will create 5 meaningful queries joining together a minimum of 3 tables, max of 8. Explain what the query is. Just give me a sentence and its significance. And what I mean is, I don't want you to write down, I did this because it was a problem assigned. You should actually look at the data and try to figure out some correlations and some stuff people could be looking for. I want you to use the newer join syntax. And again, alias your table names and alias your field names. All right. Now, you're being given, and I may have passed this out last week. I may not have because I don't remember. But I'm going to bring this up. And this is your second assignment. All right. Now, again, it's all
Mr.
contrived.
Scott.
Yes.
So I just wrote down everything that you were doing while you were doing it just now.
Yeah.
Is there a way, like, does it save itself, or like, what do I do now?
Well, when you say you wrote down what I was doing, what do you mean?
Like, I wrote it like when you were making the different queries or whatever, like in your SQL, I was
Okay.
following along and doing that, but
No, it does not save it any place. So what I did was this. After I got it to work, I went and copied it off and just threw it into a text file.
okay.
Okay. To me, that was the easiest way. In fact, I've had students in the past do it the other way. They write all their queries in a text file, and then they copy them over to PHP-MyAdmin, because PHP-MyAdmin, in case you haven't noticed, can be a little quirky. All right, so you can do it either way. Yeah, but no, not that I know of. I guess you could do that, but you'd have to write some kind of a file to be saving everything in order to do it, because it does not by default. No, it's designed to run queries. It's not designed to save queries. All right. If you wanted to save those, all right, when you got done, I guess we could have done this, because had we gone through here, for example, on this one right here, all right, you've already seen this query. In fact, it's probably not showing right now, but let me bring it up. All right, so what I'm saying is this one right here. But typically what developers do then is they'll come through here and they'll do this. Now let's just pretend for a minute. In fact, I'm going to use one of these, the last one that we did. All right, the very last one, this one. That was enough typing. I don't know if you agree with that, but in my opinion, that was enough typing. All right, well, typically if I'm a developer and I'm going to be running this query all the time, I'm going to do something like this. Create view, and you can call it whatever you want then. Let's just say, I don't know, stuff, as. All right. Now, after you do that, then in order to run the query, all you have to type in is select star from stuff. Now, that's not helping in the question you're asking. I'm just trying to show you that not only have you going through this exercise, you learn how to do select queries. All right, I didn't have you do any inserts. I didn't have you do any updates. I didn't have you do any deletes. We're going to be getting into those very shortly, but now you hopefully at least have at least somewhat of an understanding of what a view is as well. Because all a view is you save a query. You save a query and you give it a name. All right. So yeah, I mean, again, the short answer that I made long is not that I know of. All right. So let me jump back. Into here, and I'm going to jump into then homework 2. Again, this is a contrived example. You have been hired as a database developer for a new bookstore called Books for You, opening in Wentzville soon. They will sell these 10 types of books. You can read them yourselves. As of right now, the only books you have in stock are 29 technology books on Node.js. If you go out to this site right here, and I'm going to do that in just a second, you will find a listing of what somebody has considered to be the 29 best books on Node.js. I want you to take that information and write your own schema. All right. The idea behind the first assignment was that you went back and you got used to writing queries again. And most of the time, the queries that you're going to write are going to be select queries. That said, you must also know how to create a schema. All right. Now, creating a schema in the assignment I'm having you do here. So creating a schema in MySQL is totally different, as you'll find out in a week or so, than creating a schema in NoSQL. All right, because when we get into MongoDB, technically, you don't write a schema. All right, so it's like, well, then how do you do things? It is so open-ended. Imagine for just a second, I'm gonna come down here and just do this. I'm going to just pretend for just a second that I had done this. I had said, first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, cell phone. Now, I'm not going to go back, but all those should be lowercase, but that's fine. So let's also suppose I have something here called hobbies. All right. Now, let's suppose person number 1 has a bunch of hobbies and person number 2 says, I don't have any hobbies. Well, then how do you get around that? Well, one way you can get around that is I can allow nulls in there. All right. But for somebody who's got multiple hobbies, technically, I need a record for each one of those hobbies because you can't have more than one value when you're working with a relational database management system. You can, though, do that when you are working with a NoSQL because it's schemaless. So you can decide, for example, if I had one person who had some odd trait in here, I don't even know what, all right, but not hobbies, but let's just say they had something, something. It doesn't matter what it is, but let's say that was unique to just one person. I could add that to that just one person, and I could leave that off of all of the other people who were in there. All right, because you've got much more freedom. All right, you've got much more freedom when you work with MongoDB. That's the good news. The bad news is you've already learned the fairly simple syntax for select, for insert, for update, and for delete. So for instance, and you may or may not remember this, I'm going to just cut these 2 off. But if I wanted to insert a brand new record, let's say I wanted to put myself in here. So I would say insert into employee. So that's the table name. And then I would put in here first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, cell phone. All right. In fact, let's get this out just so it fits on one line. So I'm going to remove the cell phone. All right. So zip. And then I'd say values. And I'd have, for example, Jeff, Scott. What I did there, something stupid. Scott. And, 755 Parr Road, Wentzville, Missouri, 63385. That should make sense to all of you. All right, as far as doing an insert, that there shouldn't be any surprises right there. All right, so it's insert into. Now I'd have another field in here at the top that would be called underscore ID. All right, and that ID field would be an auto increment field, and it would be an integer type of field. So since I make it an auto increment, I don't have to add it here. It's automatically added in there for me. So again, there is an insert. Now, let's say that later on, I discover, wow, I spelled Wentzville wrong. I spelled it like that. All right. So I could come in there and say update, and I got to give it the name, update employees. And then I'd say set city equal to Wentzville. Now I could do this. I could say set city equal to Wentzville, where city equals Wentzville, like that. That would work. Totally legit to do that. That's not the way it's recommended. The way it's recommended is whenever you do an update, all right, what you put in your where clause is you try to find out that ID value. So if this was the first record that was put in my table, I'd want to say where ID equals 1. That's a cleaner way of doing it. All right. First of all, you should already know you need the where clause, because if I don't, put that in there, if I just say set city equal to Wentzville, it's going to try to set the city for every record equal to Wentzville. You don't want to do that. But where you're putting something in like this, like I'm mentioning here, you should always have an ID, should be what you're doing your criteria on. And then finally, we've also got delete from employees. Again, where underscore ID equals 1. All right. And again, because I've seen people do this before. They forget to put a while or a where clause in, and they remove all their records. This is one time, or when you work with relational database management systems, by default, if you're working right from the RDBMS itself, it does not ask you. It assumes you know what you're doing. It does not come back and say, are you sure you want to do that? It would just, if I left that off, it would remove every single record that was in the employees table. All right. And again, I have seen in the past many people do that. And they say, well, how do I bring them back? Well, you type them in again. That's one reason that most companies, when they do stuff like this, all right, they always come back. They always come back and have some kind of a thing where they make copies of what they're working on. They make a backup. All right. So hopefully, I just did that very quickly, but hopefully you understand, because we've done selects up the wazoo. Now I've shown you For an insert, I've shown you what the syntax is. For an update, I've shown you what the syntax is. I mentioned that you need a where clause or all records are updated, and you typically, it's the ID that you're using this. All right, so because employees, the key field, usually the key field in almost every table, if not every table, is underscore ID. So the only way you can tell that an employee is unique, I could have two Jeff Scotts in there, God forbid, but I could have two people with the same first name. I could, what if I don't have a son, but what if this is Rankin's address, if you haven't figured that out, but what if there was a Jeff Scott Jr. and had the same stuff as me? All right, you wouldn't want to change them both. If one, maybe you would, I don't know. But the point is, the where clause, whenever possible, and it should always be possible, should be using the ID. All right, end of that sermon. All right, now I want to mention a couple more things here. And a little bit of this, I'm sorry, it's a little bit of it is, for lack of better words, is repeats, repetition, whatever you want to call it. Let me bring these two things up. Open. Again, everything I'm about to show you, you have this already. All right. It's in what I asked, basically it's in the GitHub, the repo that I gave you guys today. All right. So let me go back to this, into this. Whoops, come on. All right, so this first one is very short article, 3 pages on MERN development. I just really like the picture. All right, because it's actually starting to show us what we're going to be doing. We are going to be writing MERN web applications, but it's more than that. We're going to eventually be writing MERN web applications that are going to follow the model view controller architecture. Our model, some of the stuff we'll be writing regular code in our JS files, but we will be accessing either MongoDB or MySQL. So again, the model part is going to be the data. When we go in and create our stuff for MongoDB, this is going to sound counterintuitive to what I just told you a few minutes ago, but you write a schema file. And you go, wait a minute, you told us it didn't have a schema. You write it differently than the schema file that you write for MySQL. All right. But most books will refer to MongoDB as being schemaless, even though we will be writing a schema file. And if that confuses you, I'm sorry in advance. All right. Then for the front end side, we've always been writing straight CSS, some client-side JavaScript, our HTML, etc. And we're going to be doing that for a while. But when we get into the project that I hope we can get into halfway or so into the semester, we're going to get into React. And when we write React, we'll go back and rewrite at least one of the apps that we're going to create. Before that, we'll go back and we'll rewrite it in React. So React is another way you can do front-end development. Now, when you are working in a model view controller type of architecture, your model never, ever directly interacts with the view. So this is our model right there, the Mongo. This is our view. They do not interact directly with one another. Rather, all right, the controller that's in the middle, we'll be using Node with Express with Node. That, as it says there, is, I don't even call it a traffic cop. I call it a supervisor, because as requests come in, they usually come in to the controller, and then we'll have more than one controller eventually. But the right controller will say, will call the right database or the right table or the right query or the right something. then that will do its thing. It will send information back to the controller. The controller will then grab that information and basically make sure that it's formatted, typically back into HTML, so it can be sent back to the user. All right. And sorry if that's a little bit of replication of what we talked about before. All right. But, I have talked to people that have gone in for MERN type of job interviews. And basically what they say is, they've been asked questions like, all right, you've got 1 minute or 2 minutes or whatever, explain the entire MERN stack to me. And that's kind of what they're looking at for. Or explain the role of model view controller in MERN web development. That's what I just did with you. All right. So in here, it says, MERN stack is a JavaScript stack used for easier and faster deployment of full stack web applications. Now, back when I was teaching at the college I used to be at, they weren't MERN stack. We used something that was called the LAMP stack, and it's still in use today. All right, but LAMP is another acronym. It stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Many people will tell you that PHP is at least kind of a hard package to work with. I don't necessarily agree with that. All right. I taught PHP for years. I went out to San Diego, California and got a PHP certification. I think it's just as easy as this stuff, but it's not as popular as this is. And in many ways, it's not as powerful as this is, which is why we're using MERN stack instead of LAMP stack. So you come in here, I'm not going to read a bit of this, but it tells you all about Mongo, tells you all about Express, tells you all about React, and tells you all about Node. And when you look, it's telling you all about MERN, which is the MERN stack. All right. And the other thing I quickly want to mention to you, then I'm going to change my share. And this other article, it's a little longer. I'm not going to spend much time on that either. But as it says, it's a roadmap to becoming a pro in MERN stack development. I liked it for a few reasons. First of all, I thought it was pretty well written. You can see March 23rd, it's fairly current. All right. And there are hyperlinks in there, etc. All right. So it says follow these steps. Step 1, learn front-end development. Well, that was the AWD1111 class. That is a front-end web development class. You learned in there HTML, CSS, JavaScript. All right. You also learned in there some of the tools you can use. You learned Git. You learned VS Code. You learned Bootstrap. Now, the one thing we don't talk about in there is Sass. All right. In many ways, I'm going to give you Sass in about a minute. But in many ways, the thing about Sass is Sass allows you to take your CSS file and treat it more like a Java file. More like a JavaScript file. And what I mean by that is Sass allows you to create CSS variables. All right. You can also create your own functions in there. It can cut down on the amount of repetition and some other stuff that you do. You'll notice it's fairly recent in that it's only 6 years old. All right. It says there it's still popular for the features it adds to CSS. I would somewhat agree with that. There are a lot of articles out there today that says that Sass has basically seen its best days. And there's other things that you can use instead of it right now. We don't go over Sass. We can't cover everything there is to cover in these classes. All right. So step 3, learn website design basics. You did that. Step 4, which is what you're going to be doing in here a little bit later, and that is learn how to use React. All right. Now, I believe, and Clayton, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Evan does get into a little bit of an intro to React in his AWD 1000 class. I will be doing the same thing, the next time I teach AWD1000. I think he spent the last 2 weeks and did a simple project. All right. In fact, he's even sent me his project and told me that I can use that if I want to. I haven't looked at it though. Step 5, learn the backend portion. Well, what is that? That's MERN. Node, Express, MongoDB. All right. They already had React up here. All right. So that is everything. Step 6, keep practicing and refine your skills. All right. So it is 1:57. Let's come back at 2:10. And when we do, we're actually going to come in and write some JavaScript code. All right. So I'll see you at 2:10. All right, it is 2:10, so let's start back up. And I think I've changed it already, but I'm going to double check. And that is, I want you to please, we're going to do a couple things. All right, first thing I'd like you to do, and I don't think I have to change my my screen share to do this. Why don't you just please make a folder on your desktop and just call it something like Simple Server 1, something like that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to run it all together, all lowercase. I'm going to make a folder on my desktop called Simple Server 1. So I know you can't see this, and I'm going to run the two words together. So Simple Server 1, an empty folder. That's all I'm going to do right here. All right, now I'm going to double check and check on my share here. And my share now is set to Visual Studio Code. It might have been earlier too, I don't know. All right, and then I'm going to bring this or start on this simple server. And this is going to be real simple. This will not take very long, but some of this at least is meant to be review. All right, because we kind of jumped into it and then we were out of it. Now we're going back into it again. The first thing I'm going to show you in here is, for lack of better words, how not to do this. And when I say how not to do this, it's not that what I'm going to show you is wrong, but we're going to create Simple Server 2 in a few minutes, and it will be written better than Simple Server 1 is. All right. So again, you might say, well, then why are you doing this? Just to show you that there's more than one way of doing it, because you're going to see both. So underneath Simple Server 1, I want you to create a brand new file, and we'll just call it server.js. What it really and truly doesn't matter what you call the file. It really and truly doesn't matter what you call the file. All right. Now, with that saying, I'm going to hit enter. All right. Now, the next thing that I want to do is I want to open up a terminal window. So I'm going to go terminal, new terminal. You saw me do this the other day. There's my new terminal. All right. And we're going to use the shortcut today. Normally, when we do these projects, we're going to type in npm init and hit enter, and we're going to answer all the questions. Since these first couple projects that we create are just kind of simple, bogus little projects, we're going to do the shortcut. And that is to say npm init space minus lowercase y. And what that does is it accepts all the defaults for everything. So please open up a terminal window and type in npm space init space minus y and hit enter. And that made a brand new package.json file for us. And if I open up that package.json file, you're going to see it just grabbed, for lack of better words, everything it put in there are the defaults. So in other words, the default name was the name of our folder. The default version was 1.0.0. There was no description. Main, which tells us basically what to start running, is the file we'd already created. If you don't create a file, so let's say we had done this and not even created a file, it assumes that what you're going to call it then is index.js, which is totally legit. But let's say that you did an npm init minus y and you had in there index.js. You can go in and modify this file. Not only can you, I want you to go into this file right now. So I want you to go into your package.json file. This file is also known as a manifest file. So in many ways, it's sort of like an Android manifest file. Now I'm saying that not for your benefits, but Nick and James have already taken the Android course and they're familiar with the Android manifest file. All right, if you have this open, we don't need this line in here that says test. We're going to put our own thing in there. So you can remove that whole line. So it looks like this. Now we want to add a new thing in here, but we have to put a comma in. And we're going to come in here and type in dev start like that, and then a colon, and then in double quotes, we're going to put in nodemon.js like that. Now, if you're squirrely like I am, you like stuff to line up, you can do that. By no means do you have to do that. But we now have two different ways that we can run this program, and there's actually more than that. But these are the two main ways. So what's the difference between them? Well, the start one is going to end up being used typically. That's the program that's going to run automatically once you put your application out on the internet. It's immediately going to invoke whatever you put after start. You should never remove this, and if you don't have one, you should add it with just node followed by the name of your file. When you do this, it is not mandatory. It is not mandatory that you put in the extension. So just node server would work, but I tend to see it more often than not. All right. Now, if we're not in start mode, and this is, again, this is what's going to run when we're in production mode, meaning we have taken this thing and put it out on the internet where anybody can use it, that we give access to. So that means we're in production mode. When we're not in production mode, we're in development mode. That's why I call this one start, because that's what it should be called. But that's why I call this one dev start. So this is how we're going to start something in development mode. Now, this won't do a darn thing right now because we have not added this. We have not yet added this file. So I'm hoping that by now you've made these changes here. That's what yours looks like. And I'd like you to please do a file, save, and I'd like you to close that file. Do a file, save, and I'd like you to close your package.json file. Then I'd like you to jump back into your terminal here and type in the following: npm I minus capital D nodemon. And again, we have talked about this before, but I want to review it. npm says go out to the node package manager. It used to be when you typed in npm, you had to immediately, after typing in npm, you had to type in the word install, and you still can do it. But they've shortened it so that all you need is to type in I. And if you tell me I can type in one letter or I can type in 7, sorry, I'll take one every time. Again, it used to be in here that rather than minus D, you typed in minus dev. You don't have to do that anymore. So what this is going to do is a couple things. All right. If hopefully you can see my mouse over here, or the cursor, I should say. This is going to create a new file. I'm sorry. This is going to create a new folder called node_modules. We don't have that folder in here right now. It will also create a file that's called package.lock.json. Right now, we've only got package.json. So if you've already done this, npm I minus D, and the order in which you put these doesn't matter. I think you could even say npm nodemon I minus D, or you can say npm minus di nodemon, etc. But I always just do my npm I, and then if I've got a flag like this, I do it next, because it works. So if you've got npm I minus capital D nodemon, hit the enter key. Now it's going in and it's basically loading into your project. It's loading both nodemon and everything that nodemon depends on. So if you notice in here, it says added 32 packages and audited 33 packages in 5 seconds. And it says 3 packages are looking for funding. I don't know why they put that junk there, but they do. So if I were to come over here on the side and open up this, I think that what that's saying is there's 32 of those in there. And if I go down, they're in alphabetic order. You'll notice if I go down long enough, there's nodemon. not only does it go and add NodeMon to my project, it adds all of the dependencies that NodeMon has. And it looks like in there, there's 32 or 33 or whatever of them. All right. So now what I want you to do next then is I want you to, first of all, I'm going to close this there. I want you to, before we go and bring this up, I want you to again bring up package.json. And you'll notice this is what we added before. I kept it in blue, but now we've got something that's been added for us, and that's this. We're going to do another one of these a little bit later, but for now, this is going to be the only dependency we're going to have. For right now, this will be the only dependency. In just a bit, we're going to create another file, simple server 2, and we're going to add another dependency to that. So if you decide you wanted to at a later time, you can come back in here and put in your name. You could add keywords if you want, etc. You get the idea. Now, I want to talk about this. All right. The first number is the major version. If that number changes, from 2 to 3, that means there have been really, really major upgrades to it. It's a major version change. So the number before the first period is the major version. The number after the first period is the minor version. The number after the second period is typically called the patch number. All right. So this is version 2, patch 19 or update 19. You see both names. Now, I don't want to go over them right now, but you can go and check this online yourselves. What you're going to see there is either going to be nothing or a caret like that, or a tilde, you know, that little squiggly that's right underneath your escape key. And there's one or two other ones. And what those are saying is, I think the caret says use the most current version of this you can find. All right. It says this is the one we loaded, but if you've got a more current version, use it. Now, if I open up, and you don't have to do this, but if I'm going to close my package.json file, but I'm going to open my package.lock.json file. This shows in here all of the different things that we've got and the versions that are being used. So you'll notice node modules, concat map, debug, fill range, etc. And if we go down far enough, because again, this is an alphabetic order, all right, there's NodeMon. Okay, so it's in there. It's telling us this is the version we're using. And there's a bunch of other stuff. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I don't know what most of this stuff is because I don't have to. All right. But there's probably, at least I would guess, there's 32 of these in here, or 33. If there's one of these for everything that you see in here, you're going to find in here. So again, just to keep it simple, if I look in here, here's any match. So if I go back up near the top, there's AB brief, there's any match. You'll notice that, you know, if I keep going, you know, and looking in here, there'd be a lot more as well. All right. So for instance, you know, I can just keep looking in here and there'll be more and more of these things is what I'm telling you. All right. So that's the first thing. The next thing, I'm going to tell you about this, and I'm still looking for some documentation on it because I don't know where the documentation is, but I have to go look through Visual Studio Code's documentation. Why? Because I want you to see this, that if you click extensions, all right, you can do this if you want, or you can just watch. You don't have to add this. But if I come in here and I type in node, I think it's node snippets. It's node hyphen snippets. All right. I don't know what all those snippets are, but you'll notice there's a couple of them. I've got one installed and there's another one in caps, one in lowercase. What's the difference? I don't know, except this one looks like it was written by Chris Noring. This one looks like it was somebody else. Wii Sports Resort. All right. I did add this before, but I don't know what it did. I've got to find myself some documentation on it. Why would you want that? Because it has keystroke combinations that you can use to write things for you quicker. All right. C# had snippets that you can use too. I didn't really introduce those to you because I want you to learn to do things the right way where you type it in yourselves. But when we get to React has got, I mean, if I go in here and type in this, React snippets, all right, there they are. So there's React snippets as well. And you'll notice, again, there's a whole bunch of flavors of these. I mean, look at these. These are all React snippets here. What are they? They're probably all written by different people. All right. So why is that one first? I don't know if this happens to be in alphabetic order or what, the number of downloads. I don't really know how they set that up. All right. But I'm just trying to show you, I'm trying to be complete here and show you a bunch of the stuff that's in here. All right. So now we've got our server.js file. We're going to write a little bit of code. And again, this isn't the best way of doing this, but it's still a way that you will see at least at times. All right. So I'm going to remember, if I click this, it's going to show me my Explorer window. If I click over here and drag, now the Explorer window is gone. I can always bring it back. I want you to be able to see everything I'm typing in right now. Everything. All right. So I'm going to start with const HTTP equals require HTTP. I know that one of those node snippets, as soon as I type in, I think as soon as I type in this, the const HTTP, I think the snippet adds the rest of it. So if I just hit tab, I don't have to type the rest of that in. That's what I mean by the snippets. All right. So we've got that line. We're only going to put a couple lines in here and then we're going to run it. I'm going to say const port equals, typically you can put in any number here between 1,000 and 9,999. I've even seen people put smaller and larger numbers in. But for now, we're just going to put in, it doesn't matter. I'm going to put in 5555. All right. Now that means that we're going to run this on port 5555. Now, what if I go, what if I'm a little further on in the process? I've created this cool app. I pushed it out to the internet. Well, guess what? I won't want it to say this anymore. So I'm going to show you something you can add, but you, as of right now, especially with a simple example like this, you don't need to. But you can also type in here process.env.port or this. In English, what this means is, hey, if wherever I'm running this, if this is especially for the internet, use whatever port they use. But if I'm running it locally, or if a port has not been defined, then use 5555. All right. Again, not that big a thing, but I for completeness sake, I'm trying to show you this. All right. Now, we're going to come in and we're going to add something else. But for right now, I'm only going to put in one more line. Then, whoops, sorry. And then we're going to run this. All right. So for now, I'm going to say server.listen. Oh, I didn't call it server. I called it const HTTP. Let's make one more. We'll make two more lines. I'm going to say const server equals HTTP dot, and notice what comes up. It goes in and it whips into the IntelliSense. We want to use create server. As soon as I put a C in there, you'll see that it says, oh, you probably want create server. Yes, I do. So I hit tab and it accepts it. All right. And then we're going to put in here REQ, RES, and we want to put another one of those in there. All right. And then we're going to put in this. I'm going to go over all this in about 30 seconds. But we're just for not right now, we're not going to put anything else in there. We're going to do it just like this. All right. And then we're going to put in server.listen on our port. And again, we're going to do this. And we're going to say console.log. And you're going to have plenty of time to type this in a minute. Server running on port. Just like that. All right. So if you haven't, make sure all that's typed in. I'm going to give you a couple minutes and then I want to go over every line that's in there. All right, then taking it from the top, line 1 is saying go out to the node package manager. In fact, I'm sorry, it is not. You may or may not remember this. I don't want to do this because I'm going to have to change my share again, and I don't want to. Line 1 says go out to the node documentation, which is at nodejs.org, and one of the built-in node modules, one of the built-in Node.js modules, not in Node Package Manager, but one of the built-in Node Package modules is HTTP. Get that, bring it into my program, and when I want to use the methods that are available in it, we're going to start those methods with HTTP. All right, hopefully what I just said makes sense. So I will even add here, I'll add some comments. Add built-in Node.js HTTP module. All right, and you know what HTTP is. All right, HTTP, the hypertext transfer protocol that handles requests and responses. All right, so here we're setting, basically add this and, refer to it as HTTP in the program. All right, so that's what we're doing there. Then we're coming down here and we are setting our port designation. And we're setting it to be whatever port is assigned, we'll put there on the internet. So in other words, if you're out on the internet, or port 5555 if running locally. We are running locally. All right. Then this next line that's right here is literally saying, create the server. Now, all kidding aside, you're all smart enough to know that inside of these curly braces right here, right there, inside of this pair of curly braces, there is currently, that would be nothing. So this server is not going to do anything. We're going to change that in just a moment. All right. But currently it's not doing anything. These two things are the most important part of the class so far. That is the HTTP request object. That is the HTTP response object. We will use REQ and RES in most everything that we write. All right, so that will create the server. We're going to add more to it in just a bit. All right, then finally, we're going to start the server. So we're telling it to run on the port, which says, hey, if you're out on the internet, you know what the port is. And if you're not out on the internet, use that port. And what should happen with Node running our JavaScript on the server side is in our terminal, it should give us a message that says server running on port 5555. Now, I went over that quickly. I've got a question for you. Is there anything I just said that needs repeating? Anything? All right. Then we're going to do a file, save, and we're going to open up in our terminal. If you remember, you don't have to bring this up, but in our terminal, in here, in our package.json, remember we put this in. Oops. We put in this right here. Where is it? Dev start. Now, we technically can come in here and just type in, oh, that's a mistake. That shouldn't have been nodemon.js. That should have been nodemon server.js. I apologize. Go back, go into your package.json file and make that change, please. Make sure it looks just like what I've got on the screen. And after you do, we can run it by just saying nodemon space server.js. That will work. But the recommended way after you go when you create something like this, the recommended way to run this, and I'm going to save, is to say npm run and then the name, which is dev start. So npm run dev start. So please make sure you go back to package.json. Make sure you go back to package.json and you changed this because your instructor foolishly put nodemon.js in there instead of nodemon space server.js. All right. And then when you get done with that and you've saved, in your terminal window, type in npm run dev start. If this works, we should get a message down here. It should tell us that the server is started, and then it should say server running on port 5555. So let's see if that's the case. You hit enter, and it's started. So there it started. And it says server running on port 5555. All right. Now, just to show you this, look on my screen right here. You can see what's highlighted right there. I'm going to leave that highlighted. But if I click up here, it'll probably be unhighlighted. But I'm going to change this from server running to server now running. You don't have to do this. But I want you to see, if you look on the screen, since I made changes in the server.js file, boom, the server automatically restarted for me. All right. So whenever you make changes in the server.js file, in this case, the server restarts. That's a very important thing, because if we did not have nodemon, all right, if we did not have nodemon, see, when I saved it, even started again. But if we did not have nodemon running, when I clicked this, the server would have been running. I would have had to do a Control-C to stop it. And then I'd have to type it in to start it up again. So you have nodemon, which is short for node monitor. All right. So we've got all that. That's all fine. But right now, if we want to see what our server is doing, and I already said it's nothing, we want to go out to port 5555. So how do we do that? Well, I'm going to have to change my share for a second and change my share to the internet. And out on the internet, what I want to do is I want to come out over here and say localhost 5555. And when you hit enter, it's spinning, but I don't know why it would be spinning. Yeah, I'm hooked up to the network, so that isn't the problem. What should happen, and I'm not sure why I'm not getting anything, what you might get on yours, and I should be getting on mine, is cannot get, and then it'll have a /. And if you get that, that's what it's supposed to be doing. So I'm trying to figure out here why and what it doesn't like as far as what I'm doing. I mean, I ran it here this morning and there was no problem with it. Let me see if I go on to the Rankin. Cripes, I might have kicked you guys off. Can one of you yell to me? Are you still on? Are you still on? Okay,
We're
good.
here.
All right, good. All right. So what I want to check is when I type in localhost 5555, it should be coming back and saying cannot get with a /. Did you try it on yours and is that what it said? Or is it spinning like mine is? Either one of you.
Oh wait, what am I exactly?
Mine's currently spinning.
Yours is currently spinning and it shouldn't be. Let me double check, but there's no error in there that I saw. So let's see. The server's running, so that's fine. All right. Normally we get some kind of a message. I'll tell you what, just go ahead. If yours is still running, just stop it. Just hit the X. It's or the up there. That's fine. Okay. We're going to go back and I'm going to go back into mine too. Go back into your Visual Studio Code right here. And I will change my share back to Visual Studio Code. All right, and in Visual Studio Code, it might be because this line is blank. So we're going to type in here just 2 lines of code. We're going to type in res.send. Res.send. I don't know why it's doing that, but it is. Boy, oh boy. And we're going to put in here, hello world. I'm going to get that D out of there in a minute. Hello world. And let me get that D out of there. All right. Then on the next line, we're going to type in res.end. All right. So type in those 2 lines, please. Res.send hello world and res.end. We're going to go over what those mean in just a moment. All right. After you've done that, do a file, save. Then, and I'm going to do it with you, go back in. I have to change my share. Sorry, but go back into the internet. Out to the internet. And again, open up a new tab and type in localhost 5555 and hit enter. What? Why is it saying that that cannot be reached? Good golly. I ran through everything this morning. It worked just fine. Had no problems with anything.
Yeah, mine didn't work either.
All right. I'm going to try one thing quickly and I'm going to see if this matters. Okay. So just bear with me for a second here. That didn't matter. I'm going to try doing that. Just change that to this. Okay. Should be all right. Good golly. Try one more thing. See any errors in the code. This is incredible. Jeez. I am broadcasting from Rankin. All right. And the only reason I'm telling you that is I am not in the main building. I'm in the other building. So I've got to do all this goofy stuff in order to get to the network. But if you're having the same problem I am, I don't understand why. Let me go over what's supposed to be happening. And I don't, like I said, I did all this morning. I even printed out a hard copy. Boom, it worked like a charm. All right. So let's see. Change my share. I'll go back to Visual Studio Code. All right. So I tried changing the port number, even though I knew that wouldn't matter. And I tried changing, I got rid of the process. I got rid of the process.env.port. All right. Like that. I got rid of that. And it didn't change anything. So I changed this just to a different number. All right. What is supposed to happen when you go to localhost : all right, and then the port number 5555 is it should have said hello world. Now, why didn't it? I don't have a flippin' clue. All right, but it is supposed to do that. Now, again, I'm trying to figure out what the problem is because I'm going right off my code that I've got right in front of my face. That, like I said, I ran this morning and it worked just fine. The server's up and running. We can tell that by our line here. So it's not that. And this should be just fine. HTTP create server, request and response, boom, boom, arrow function, res.send. All right. Instead of a send, let's try a res.write. See if that changes it. All right. We're going to do a res.write. That might be the problem. All right. Do a res.write. Do a file save. All right. I'm going to change my share here.
Yeah, that fixed it.
Okay. And now our localhost 3210, well, it's 5555. Yep, that was it. Hello world. Now, when we first ran this, all right, technically, if we had done this, I just want to show you this because you're going to see this sooner or later. All right, I'm going to go back for just a second and I'm going to comment some stuff out. I don't want you to do this, but I wanted to show you something. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go back to what we had before and I'm going to comment out these two lines. Like that. Now, when we did this before, nothing came up and I want to see if that happens again or not. All right. So let me save it. Again, you don't have to do this. I'll be right where you guys are in just a moment. All right, it is going to spin. But sooner or later, you're going to run something. And what you run, you'll get a message like cannot get /. And I want to explain to you what that is. I want to do that right now. So I'm going back into VS Code because I want to show you something. And you can put the same thing in, if you would please, that I'm putting in. All right. Now, according to what you said, you got that to run. Is my VS Code showing on your screen right now?
No.
Okay, then it didn't take, so let me do it again. Is it there now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is all fine. We told it to write that to the screen, and then we told it to send that response back as a write and then end. There's even a shortcut for doing it. You don't have to do this. but we could have just put a, whoops, we could have just come in there and put in there res.end and then left the other line out. So it would look like that. Either way like that would work. So why are you showing us? Because you see it both ways. All right. Now, no problem with that except for one thing. And that is typically what you want when the server starts is you don't want it to show hello world on the screen. You want a web page to come up. All right. So let's change it so that a web page does come up. All right. We're going to do that right now. So the first thing I'd like you to do is to go and comment out these two lines. You actually could leave them in there, but just comment them out. All right. Then I'd like you to come over to here and I'd like you to add a new file. And that new file, let's just make it index.html. We don't have any kind of folder structure in here yet. We'll add that later. But now you've got an index.html. Okay. So we're going to come in here, hit the exclamation point and tab, because that'll build the template for us. I'll change this to homepage. I'll put an H1 tag in here that says homepage. And you don't have to do this, but you can. I'm going to put in a paragraph and I'm going to put in some lorem ipsum. So I'm going to type in lorem 25 and hit tab. So now I've got a paragraph with 25 words in it. Oops. No, I don't want to do that. Cancel. And I'm going to grab that and I'm going to copy it and I'm going to put it in here about 5 or 6 times. Now, you know this from what I've shown you in the past or what Evan's shown you in the past, that if I save this, I can right mouse, whoops, if I do a file save and I right mouse click in here and I open it with live server, that it'll come up. There it is. It's no biggie. I don't care. We don't want to do it like that anymore though. We want our server to render that file. All right. That's a change. All right. We want our server to render that file. So how do we do that? Well, once you've got your index.html page done, you can put anything you want in there. It doesn't matter. We could put a link in there and create a CSS file. We could put an image in there, etc. I'm just keeping it simple. But I'm going to do a file save and I'm going to jump back into my server.js file. All right. Now, what we want to do is we want to be able to read that file into our program. So in other words, once we come up and we open this, oh my goodness, once we open this thing here, once we start the server and we're on our home page, all right, what we want to have happen, all right, what we want to have happen is we want that file to show. All right, so how do we do that? All right, so I'm going to come in here and at the beginning, we want to come in and we want to tell it to read a file. All right, and there is a routine called read file, but in order to use that routine, we've got to come back up to the top of our program and we have to add another built-in NodeJS module, but this one will be the FS or file system module. And again, we will refer to it as FS in the program. So we just come in here and say const FS equals require FS. All right, so I'll give you a second to add that. And I will tell you, because if you go out and you look, you can say, hey, Jeff, there's other ways of doing this where you don't even have to bring in FS. I know that. All right, there's send file and there's a bunch of other stuff you can use. I'm just trying to show you a way of doing this. All right, so I'm taking for granted you had time to type in that line Whether you put the comment in or not is irrelevant. So I'm going to come down here now and I'm going to say this. FS dot, notice when I say read file, there's two of them. There's read file and there's read file sync. All right. The first one that it shows is going to read it asynchronously, which means if it's going to take too long, the program is designed to go on and do other things. If I want the program to stop and not do anything until that file is read, then I would use the read file sync. All right, but I'm just going to use read file right here. So when I use read file, it's going to require a couple things. First, it's going to say, hey, what do you want to read? I want to read index.html. So that's the first parameter that I'm putting in here. All right. And then it says, okay, if you're going to do that, there's other stuff that I need. And what other stuff do I need? Well, what if index.html didn't exist? All right, that would mean it's possible that what we could have in here would be some kind of an error. So that's we're going to cover that if it fails. But if it succeeds, we're going to want to put in here data. All right. So what the heck does this all mean? Everything we just did in here. What does this mean? Okay. And what we're saying in here is, okay, we're calling right here, we're calling read file. We have to give it the file we want to read and two more parameters. This will be what happens if that file doesn't exist. We either misspelled it, we put the wrong directory in there or whatever. This is going to allow us to actually print out the contents of that file. All right. So what do we want to do in here? All right. The first thing that we want to do is we want to come in here and we want to handle if there's an error. So if there's an error, and there's a lot of things that we can do, just so you know, there are a lot of things here that we can do. All right, and I missed this. There should be a curly brace there. There we go. It's got to start there, and it's got to end there. There. Let's see, curly brace, curly brace. All right. And I'll tell you what, I screwed that thing up. Let me rewrite it. All right. I'm going to rewrite everything I just did. So I should have written fs dot read file, and notice the F is capitalized in file. What do we want to read? Which is index.html. All right. And after we read that, what's going to happen? Well, either it's going to fail, which means we'll get an error, or it's going to succeed. You don't have to call them error and data, but those are typical names that are used. All right. And then we're going to use that arrow function again, like that. All right. So what does this mean? We're telling it to read this file. And then we come in here and we say, if there is an error, then we have to figure out what we want to do. Now, what a lot of people do, I'm going to put this in, but I'm going to erase it right away. But what a lot of people do is they just type in here, throw error, just like that. The program will end because it'll throw out an error message. You're done. Now, is there anything wrong with that? Technically, no, but you're not giving the user any idea as to what the heck happened. So although you can do that, in this case, it's kind of a poor practice. So what we're going to do instead is in here, we're going to say res dot. First, we're going to do a write head, and we're going to put a 404 in there. Do either one of you know what a 404 error is? Have you ever seen a 404 file not found?
No.
Okay. If you go out to a site, so let's say I go out to site, whatever it is, xyz.com, and they've changed the name of that site. All right. And it's now no longer xyz.com. So they have a redirect where they're redirecting me to a new site, abc.com. But somehow somebody mistyped abc.com and they typed in abb.com. So when you try to access a file that doesn't exist, you get a 404 error. All right. So that's fine. But now we want to also write into here, we're going to say error, file not found. Like that. So what we're telling it there is if we have reached this file, like I said, either it doesn't exist, something's wrong, or whatever, and we'll look at that in just a moment. If there's an error, this is how we're handling it. Else, guess what? Else everything worked. So we can say res.write, and we'll write the data. All right. What should happen now, save the file. All right. So save your file to a file save. All right. And then I'll change my share here. We'll take another break in just a few minutes. All right. I'm going to change my share and I'm going to go back to the internet here. And where I had this, localhost 5555, I'm going to type it in again. Localhost : 5555, hit enter, and there is my web page. All right, this isn't anything magical, except rather than going out to the internet and, for example, going out to google.com and grabbing one of their servers, we are grabbing information that's on our own server. We are using our machine as both a client and as a server. All right, so we are hosting this right here. All right, now, one more thing. I'm going to jump back there. So I'm going to jump. Yes.
Is there a way we can see the error?
Yes, that's what I'm going to show you right now.
Okay.
I'm glad you asked, really. So I'm going back in here and I'm going back and I'm changing my share. So I go back to Visual Studio Code. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the X from index. So now it's trying to put in inde.html. Can you both see this?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to do a file save. I'm going to change my share again. I'm going to go back to the internet. And I'm going to take my local host and I'm going to refresh the page. Now, it may have cached it. It probably did. So that's why it's still showing it to me. But I'm going to start it up again here. I'm going to just open another window and put in localhost : 5555 and hit enter. All right. Now it's sitting there spinning, but what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to bring that error up. All right. Now we're just touching the surface on this stuff as well. All right. We're not doing really that much with it right now. All right. So it's just sitting here spinning. I'm not sure why it's spinning, but the point is we have now handled, it's not showing anything. All right. But what I showed you should have worked. It didn't. I don't care. Believe me, we're going to have plenty of time that we're going to write error code. But what I want you to get out of this before we take a break is the following. I'm changing my share back to Visual Studio Code. All right. We have now handled it that if we do put in a valid name, it's going to read it. All right. Now, with this write head, this 404, okay, what I believe, now notice it says that it can't be found. Okay, that's not what I thought it would show, but but I'm going to right mouse click over here. I'm going to go to inspect. I'm going to go over sources. No, there should be a network tab over here. All right. And somewhere over here, when this doesn't work, do you see where that says 200? That meant everything was cool. All right. If you don't see it, don't worry about it. All right. We are going to have to learn to write code that handles both stuff working and stuff not working. This is handling something not working. This is handling something working. That's all I wanted to show you right here. All right. Okay. Now it is 3:07 or just about 3:10. If I gave you a 10-minute break, it'd be 3:15. I do have another project for us to do, just the way that it's been working here. And I never have these problems at home. So what I want to do is I want to stop the lecture for today and give you time that if you want to, you can work on your homework. I will give you a little hint. And where is it? You're not going to see my hint for just a second. So let me, where am I here? There it is. All right, so we've got, come on. Okay. Yep. All right. So I'm going to jump. I'm going to change one more time. I'm going to change my share and then we're done for the period. I want to go back to this. If you say, what's this? You're going to see it in 10 seconds. All right. I kind of went through this one quickly, but I do want you to know what I want you to do is I want you to create a schema for this. So I want you to go out to this website, which I said I'd go out to and didn't. So I'm going to do that in a second. All right. But I want you to write a schema, and this is all the information that that schema should hold. You will not put every one of those fields into the same table. All right. These are the field names here. And I'm even going to go as far as to tell you I had 4 tables. I'm not saying you're going to have that many. You could have less. You could have 5 if you needed to. But I had 4 tables to hold this information. Now, let me change my share, and this should be the last time today. Back to the internet. And when you go out to that site, it's 29 books. This is what it looks like. All right. For the image, what I used was I just right mouse clicked on here and chose copy image address on the picture of the image. You should never, ever, ever store actual images in a database. Rather, you store the path to where those images exist. So, the fields that you were supposed to be adding, all right, I'm not going to change my share, but the fields you're supposed to be adding are title. There's the title. Description. You can either use the description in here or down here. All right. Author first name. There it is. Author last name. There it is. Publisher. In order to get the publisher, you're going to have to go out to one of these pages here. If you go out to the view on Amazon, it'll show you the publisher. Or if you look down here, it's Packed Publishing, just so you know. So that's the publisher name. The category name, well, I gave you those categories, and I said there were 10 of them. The third one down is information technology. So that will be the category name. The edition, you'll have to go out and find that stuff. The year, you'll have to go out and find that. If you click on one of these two, you'll be able to find all that information. What I'm asking you, because I'm done. So what I'm asking you is, do you understand Do you understand in the assignment that is right here? Do you understand what I am asking you to do?
Yeah, I do.
All right. Clayton, do you understand?
Yes.
Okay. Because I don't want to take anything for granted. Maybe I told you, but the reason I'm in here today is one of my students, my first year students, totally screwed up his Git and his GitHub, and he had to come in here today. I'm not even supposed to do that. I'm supposed to not have students come in here because it's an online class. But it took 2 hours for us to fix that this morning. And why? Because I said something and he took it to mean a certain thing that wasn't what I said. And he said, yeah, I should have asked you a question about that at the time. Yeah, you should have, because I spent an hour on a Teams meeting with him on, I think it was Saturday, another hour yesterday, and 2 hours today. So that's why I'm trying not to take anything for granted. So as you're working on this, if you have any questions, don't assume, just please ask. What we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to do 2 things. When we first start, we're going to build another project, and it's going to be a little more complex than this one, but not much. All right. We're going to see what we do is if we had 2 different pages, and I want you to understand the difference. I want you to understand the difference between get and post. And you go, I already know that. Yeah, but I want you to see them on the websites we're creating. Then when we get done, we're going to rebuild the BMI program, and we're going to rebuild it as a Node program. So we're going to do 2 programs tomorrow. One that's a simple explanation of how to use Express and what it is. And then another one when we'll be using Node.js. All right. If there aren't any other questions, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for putting up with all this share and all this other junk. It's an experience for me as well as you. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow.